You are looking live.
Here comes the play. Goodman at the free throw line. Jumper.
He broke his ankles. He is Houdini.
Mickey Mantle don't care about you, so why should you care about him? Nobody cares.
That's not a good call. No.
You don't like that call.
I don't like that call.
Woo, 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 woo. Not so fast.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Mike's Madness YouTube channel, and in this video I am joined by a good friend of mine, Zach, roommate, buddy from college, and we are talking about the NFL going into Week 14, how the Eagles have been an absolute disaster, the NFC East has turned into the NFC least, and other major stories around the NFL heading into Week 14 as we look ahead to the playoffs. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, a like would be great. Subscribe for more videos. Comments are always welcome. And share with all your friends. That'd be great. Enjoy the video. All right. Well, we're going to talk about the Eagles a little bit. I know that's a rough subject for you, being an Eagles fan.
Yeah.
But obviously you're disappointed on how the season's gone. And go ahead.
I just was gonna say it's been a bit of a cluster of a season. From start to where we are now, it's just continued to go downhill. There's problems with the coaching on the field itself. There's really not many good things to take out of it.
Yeah, so it's been a dumpster fire to say the least. The ironic thing is that you're still in the race for the division, but we'll get to that a little later.
Yeah,
but going into this week, the Eagles have named Jalen Hurts the starter for the game against the Saints. First, I just want to get your overall thoughts on that. Is it too late in the season to make any real, real change? Are you worried about injury? Like, what are your thoughts about Jalen Hurts starting this late in the season, being 3-8-1?
I think at this point, Wentz has lost not only his mind for the season, but a lot of the team does not seem to have his back. There's a few guys here and there that are still voicing their opinion on it and do have them, but at the end of the year, it's just Hurts should have an opportunity to shoot. He's not going to be a game changer. The issues aren't just Wentz. The issues are our offensive line. Our receivers aren't able to get open. Our coaches can't call plays. That's the big issue. But giving Hurts an opportunity to play maybe is not a bad thing. I'm hoping it'll maybe give Wentz a bit of a kick and say, "Hey, figure it out," or whatnot. It'll also give Hurts an opportunity to get a little momentum and maybe build up his confidence a little bit. In college, he fought tooth and nail to get where he is, and he's got a heck of a story. But it's something he's used to. So getting him a little bit more confidence in the league is something we can do. Our receivers are very good. Our quarterback, unfortunately, has not been. So if we can get a little bit more excitement in there, maybe we can find something. We have Jalen Reagor, who's a new guy this year, and he had a pretty good game last week, and he didn't really get those opportunities with Wentz. He returned a punt for a touchdown, and he was able to. I believe he got another touchdown on the day with the catch, and he's been able to kind of get out and do things. But he wasn't able to do that with Wentz. So I'm hoping maybe Hurts will be able to pull that stuff out. At the end of the day, we'll find out. But I don't think it's definitely too late to fix the season, but it's not too late to see what we can do with some different calls.
Sure. And when they first named Hurts the starter, I feel like that was kind of a move that was hanging in the balance. Like everybody knew it was going to happen. It was only a matter of time. After he played against the Packers, it was only a matter of time until they named him the starter. And it's a decent move, but I just got to wonder, and I sit back and I wonder, how much does this change really, like, it doesn't change the fact that Doug Peterson has been making terrible coaching decisions all year long and before this season. Like, past seasons, he's made some questionable calls. How does, changing your quarterback, that doesn't change the brain in your head coach's head. Changing the quarterback doesn't change the front office decisions and how bad those have been over the past few years. So I think this could be the beginning of a long overdue overhaul of the entire program. But again, just what do you really see the Eagles gaining from this move? And do you think this is the beginning of a rebuild?
Not at all. Within the entire NFC East, the teams rebuilding right now are the Redskins and the Giants. Cowboys and Eagles were falling. Our opportunities to rebuild were crushed when Howie Roseman spent all of our cap space on veterans that are going to be in the league for 2 more years and that are underperforming on what they used to do. You have guys like Deshaun Jackson who spent 2 seasons on the bench, but our entire coaching staff is terrible. We have our defensive coordinator who can't. He's predictable. He doesn't know how to stop offenses that we should be able to stop. And obviously, we have Doug Peterson making offensive calls that he should not be making. I know in the past 2 weeks he's slightly put them off and let Press Taylor call some, but even that is a small number. Putting Hurts in will not change those calls, and it won't fix that. If we're being honest, it might hurt the team itself a little bit more. Now there's going to be more issues in the locker room. Guys that are supporting Wentz that don't want to support Hurts, and vice versa. It might hurt more than help, but at this point, the season's done for us. So we need to just, figure out what little good pieces we can from this season.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. You mentioned that the Eagles season is already, in spite of this change and what it might give a nice insight in on the future for Hurts and what he can do with the Eagles. The most ironic thing is that the season is like, while it is an absolute terrible season and everybody is disappointed and fed up with the performance, they're 3-8-1, but they're not out of the division, although like in a way they are, but they're not. And it's really weird because this division is quite possibly the worst division in the history of football, where we got 2 teams tied for first place, one without a name and one who has had Colt McCoy as their quarterback for the past 2 weeks, but they're both 5-7. And like, is there anything that the Eagles have to do, or what do you think the Eagles have to do, if there is anything they even can do, to regain the ground they lost to the Washington football team and the New York Giants, who are both 5-7?
It's funny that we still can take the division. I hope we don't, because it'd be nice to have a top 10 pick next year. But we need to figure out offense. Our defense has been able. It hasn't been great. Like I said before, it's very predictable. But there's little bits of pieces that do look good in our defense. We've been able to stop the pass in pretty good ways. We have Darius Slay, who's been very good. Our defensive line is great. Obviously our linebacker core is not something to be spoken of, but they've picked up and they've done a little bit better. A guy like Singleton, where he's been a bit of a breakout player this year. In the linebacker core, ever since Nate Jerry got injured and benched, our linebackers have gotten a little bit better. But I think to figure it out this year, to fix those grounds, we have to get our offense figured out. We need to have better plays called. We need to get our receivers open, and we need to get a consistent quarterback. And then I think it's the games that we've lost multiple games this season that we should have won. A good example is the Steelers. There's multiple opportunities we would have had on that game, but we weren't able to pick those up. And the same goes with the Ravens. There was multiple opportunities we had against the Ravens that if we went through with them, we would have won. Like, for example, when we went for the 2-point conversion, horrible play call. If we went for the right way, we would have had those 2 points. Instead, we ended up with 6 only. So it always just goes back to the coaching.
Yeah, that I know exactly what call you're talking about, and that was probably the worst 2-point conversion try I've ever seen in my life.
No sense. And that's Doug Peterson for you. When we won the Super Bowl that year, we had Frank Wright, who's now the head coach of the Colts, and look how they're doing. They're taking a no-name quarterback, basically, essentially, and they're able to take what little they have. It's not really a no-name quarterback, but I mean from the aspect of what they have.
He's on his way out, yeah.
Yeah, his numbers are nowhere near what they used to. But you're taking a so-so team and you're making them a hell of a lot better than they should be. I remember correctly, they have Phillip Rivers, right? Yeah, I thought so, but I wasn't 100% sure. But anyway, they have Phillip Rivers, who of course is nearly a Hall of Famer quarterback from the aspect of what he's won throughout the years. He never made it to a Super Bowl. He's been able to put up some pretty good stats. He's no longer that. His receivers aren't fantastic. The defense is so, but Frank Wright has made some fantastic calls, and their offense has been able to dominate in many different ways. And that happened with the Eagles. Wentz had his almost MVP season in 2017 under Frank Wright. We had Foles, who brought us to the Super Bowl. Now both Foles and Wentz are benched. Foles is benched for Trubisky, and Wentz is benched for a rookie Jalen Hurts. And it just shows that I don't know if our talent is so much our team as it was who was our coach. I know our team has talent, but our coaching staff is the biggest issue behind it. You know, I mean, you have Doug Peterson. I keep going back to it. He cannot call plays, and I think he's a great coach. His team respects him. That nobody really talks bad about him. A few people do here and there, like Malcolm Jenkins, but he tends to really have the team, but he can't call plays. And in that Super Bowl season, he didn't. Frank did, and that was I think what led us there. So until he gives up those play calling, I don't think we'll have any success.
Yeah, and again, while the Eagles were 3-8-1, there are plenty of games that they
Should have
really
won.
could have won, or even should have won. Like the Bengals game where you tied the Bengals, that was a game that's like, I mean, I know back then Joe Burrow was still playing for them after he obviously got hurt a little later in the season. But that's a game that you look back on and say, you know what? If you go back and watch the game in its entirety, you're not going to get much from just looking at the score. But if you go back and watch that entire game, or even watch the highlights, you say, man, that's a game you got to win. The Ravens game, you almost got to come back there. That was, if you play a half decent first half, you probably win that game. The Steelers game, you hung tough. I don't know. The Steelers are a little overrated in my book, but that game you hung tough. I think you got to be somewhat pleased with the effort in that game, because that's not a game looking back on that you say, oh man, we should have won that game. Steelers are 11-1. But again, the Bengals game, Ravens game, let's see, the game against the Browns, you only lost by 5. You hung tough with the Seahawks. I mean, those are a handful of games that you hung around in, but you just couldn't finish the deal or get that one big play to make a huge change. And looking back at the division you're in, if you make those changes and you win like half of those games, you're automatically in first place by a couple games.
And like you said, we're so close to these games, but there's always something that messes up. You look back to our first game of the season, we were playing the Washington football team. The team with no name. Nobody expected anything out of them, and we were kicking the crap out of them right off the bat. We looked great, and then all of a sudden our defense said, "Nope, we forget how to play," and our offense was like, "Nah, man, this is it." And that was, and from then on, we've gone downhill. And I think one of the big things was Wentz mentally wasn't in it. Our offensive line is terrible. We've been riddled with injuries, and that has really, I feel, affected his game. Of course, with the coaching, the play calls and stuff like that. But from that point on, we would always catch up. We play a little bit better, and then that's it. I think there's many, like you said, there's many opportunities we could have had. We stayed in the games. We couldn't get that final piece. There's, for example, last week with the Packers, we were down, I believe 20-3 or 20 to something, and we had a touchdown pass. We had a punt return and a touchdown pass, punt return, something like that. And within a minute, we had 14 points on there. Well, actually 13, because then Jake Elliott missed an extra point. And like we got that momentum back, but then our defense could step up, which they had been for the entire game. All of a sudden, they were done, they fell, and their offense could do everything else, and they just slowed. And Hurts, there was a pick, and everything started to kind of go downhill. And that's, I think, what happens. We lose that momentum, and it's downhill from there. And we get really close, we get excited, we make a mistake, and it's done. Whether it's a penalty, we just get stuck on a drive, our defense makes a mistake. It's just, there's always something that screws it all up, and then we lose that, and thus we lose the game.
Yeah, it's definitely been a bad season for the Eagles, but I think I think we've beaten them up enough. Let's move on to some other NFL stories. I don't think you want to talk about how bad your team is anymore. Yeah, so the Patriots, another team that I don't know if you're disappointed with them or surprised with them, or I don't think anybody really knew what to expect, because this is the first year in what seems like forever that they didn't have Tom Brady. But they're entering this week at 6-6, and they've been on a tear as of late. And believe it or not, they're not completely out of the playoffs either. Do you see the Patriots finding themselves sliding into the playoffs, or do you think this is the end of the Patriots playoffs? Why?
I think it really depends. It took them a little bit. I think mostly because Bill Belichick and Cam Newton didn't have that. You look at Tom Brady; he was a very conservative quarterback. He knew well. He came to ways where he was with the team. He was a very respectful, very mature quarterback. You know what I mean? Off the field and on the field.
Yeah.
Cam Newton, when he's on the field, he's great. He's energetic. He really gets his team going. But when he's off, he's a little bit more of a head case. So I think I think that took Belichick a little bit more to work with him and figure out. And it's a completely different way that Newton plays. He's a running quarterback. He's a very mobile quarterback. Not as much as you look at guys like, oh God, I mean, there's he's not a Patrick Mahomes quarterback. He's able to move. He can run if he needs to. But he doesn't have the arm of Mahomes either. He's not a Jackson for sure, obviously. But it's stuff like that where he can still move and he likes to move. His arm isn't fantastic. He doesn't have a fantastic accuracy, but he can throw if he needs to. And I think that Belichick and Newton needed to kind of work together a little bit more to try to figure out what was going to work. And it took them a little bit. There was a period of time where it wasn't looking great for them, and then they picked it back up. I mean, they had their 45-0 win 2 weeks ago, which was insane. I think if they continue on the streak they're on, continue with their offense, they can make the playoffs. I don't think they'll go far in the playoffs, but I think they'll make an appearance. And they're definitely not something to be disappointed on this year.
Yeah, it's really weird because the first half of the season or so, you looked. Oh yeah, no, definitely not. I think like first half of the year, I think you probably would have been disappointed with them if you were a Patriots fan. But as of late, they've really turned things around, and it's quite remarkable because some people were thinking the first half of the season it may have been a lost cause. I think they were at like 2-4 or something like that at one point, and
had a losing.
They've really turned it around.
And like I said, I think they just figured out the little pieces that they were doing wrong and were able to just, get it figured out. There's a lot of changes within the organization, with everything from, obviously the big one is Newton and Brady leaving. But there's so many changes, and a lot of those guys are getting older. You've got injuries starting to hit them. You've got COVID is a big one this year. And you had a period of time where Cam was out, and you had receivers that were doing this and that, and everything's been a little bit of a mess. But I think once they got it figured out and everything settled, they took off.
They also had a lot of guys on the defensive end who opted out at the beginning of the season with COVID. So I think that really took them some getting used to and developing a pipeline around that because you go into the season thinking, all right, we're going to have all these starters. And then, 2 weeks before the season, everybody's like, nope, I'm out. And you're like, oh, okay, what do we do now? And, you're like, oh, here's week 1. We don't have a game plan for our defense. We're done. And so I think that's another big part of why
Definitely
they started out
on
so
a very
poorly.
bad note. Everything was kind of just going on at once.
And the Patriots, while they are 6-6 and they are on a tear, they do have a pretty tough schedule remaining. It's Thursday Night Football at the Rams. Rams are a feisty team. Next week they play at the Dolphins. They're a surprise team of the year. We'll get to them in a little bit. You don't really know what to expect down the stretch from the Dolphins because we've never really seen them in this position before. Then they play the Bills the week after that. The Bills are looking like the favorite to win their division. And then they finish out the season against the Jets. And you never know. These winless teams sometimes pull off some crazy upsets. I mean, the Jets almost beat the Raiders last week, but that's a game that you feel like the Patriots should have in hand. So
I think with –
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
So I was just going to say that although they are 6-6 and there is some positivity and some, people think they might be able to get in, their schedule is not easy. So they need some stuff to happen What do you see from them happening in the future down the stretch of the season?
I think their toughest game is going to be Bills for sure. I mean, that's Bills have been pretty consistent. Josh Allen is a fantastic quarterback. He's really, really shown his arm strength this year. He's shown his intelligence. He knows. You know, he's a smart quarterback, which is very important when you're playing certain teams. I think that will by far be their toughest. Bills have a pretty decent defense as well, but their offense has shown to be quite a powerhouse. I think Rams really depends. I personally am not a fan of Goff. I don't think he's very good. I think he's very overrated. He's an average quarterback, but he's not great. He's
Yeah, I
not
agree.
smart. He doesn't have a great arm. He's not fast. If you crunch in the pocket, he's done. He doesn't get very that. He can run, but he's not great. Um, and I think that will affect that game a lot. I think if their defense can stay in the game, if the Patriots defense can get on Goff with a lot of pressure, they'll win that game. I mean, the Eagles played them when they were a very, very low chance of winning, and they competed pretty well. And the Eagles are obviously a very bad team. And there's multiple teams that Rams have played that aren't great that they've barely competed with or they've lost to or so and so. And I think Patriots offense, sorry, is a lot better than the Rams defense. Um, you know, that one will just play out, but I give the Patriots. When it comes to, Bills already talked about Jets is a win. Of course, like you said, the Jets they won everything at this point. They'll take anything they can. It could be a very difficult game. I don't know. But I think the Patriots can. I don't think there's going to be much of an issue though. I think the Patriots. And on the topic of the Dolphins, Belichick is a fantastic coach, and he knows defense, offense, special teams. He can call it all. Now, obviously, he's got a pretty good defense coordinator, but I still think, looking at stuff like Tua Tagovailoa, he's very good, but he's new. He doesn't know the little, twists and turns of the NFL. In college, you're playing against very good corners and very good safeties and this, that, and the other thing. But in the NFL, you're playing against the best. And he won't. I don't think he's going to know to do that. And Patriots obviously have some very, very good ones, and I don't know if he'll be up to that. Tua's very good, and he's proven that, but he's also not very consistent. He's shown that he can have some really good plays in a game, but he can also have some really bad ones. And I think that will be the test. The Dolphins one could go either way. And like you said, we have not seen them in this position quite some time. I want to say it was maybe 2017 was the last time they were in the playoffs, and that was
I think, yeah, that sounds correct.
And that was a wild card game they made it in, and they were doing pretty well that season. But I think it truly depends on how in all these games it's going to go down to the quarterback. Not the Jets one. That's across the board. They're not good. But I think with the Rams, with the Bills, and with the Dolphins, it's going to go down to the quarterbacks. Because the rest of the teams have been the rest of the team on each one of them has been pretty consistent. But it really just depends on what they can give.
Yeah, I think out of this, the Rams game tonight and the Dolphins game next week, I think they take one of those two to the Bills and beat the Jets. I think they'd be very lucky to win 3 of the next 4.
I agree.
I think they'll split the next 4, and I think they'll barely miss the playoffs because although the Dolphins and Browns are kind of wild card teams, and we're going to get to them in a little bit here, but the Ravens are still hanging around. The Raiders are still hanging around. You don't know what's going to happen between the Colts and Titans, and all of those teams I just mentioned have a better record than the Patriots. And even if the Patriots can win the next 4 games, how unlikely that sounds, I think they'll still barely miss out, which would be quite something to see the Patriots not be in the playoffs.
It would definitely be something, but I think you're right. It depends. Their biggest game is the Bills. If they can win the other 3, they'll be right there. But you're right. I don't think they'll let their way in if they don't win. They have to win all of them, and there has to be a few other games lost in other places for them to get in there. But it may be a very upsetting year for them, which would be a shock for everyone else. But arguably a good one to see the Patriots not in the playoffs for one. It'd be a weird year to see the Browns and the Dolphins
Yeah, give some other teams a
But-
chance. Yeah, so Browns and Dolphins. I don't know the last time you heard those two teams in the playoff picture at the same time. Probably never. So Browns have only had 3 winning seasons in the past 20 years, including this year, and their last playoff appearance was 2002.
Well, and
Entering this week,
Baker Mayfield just broke Ben Roethlisberger's most wins for quarterback in the Brown Stadium. So I mean that was pretty good for him. I think they're having shocking
Oh
season.
man. And so the Browns and Dolphins. Yeah. I mean, I thought Browns were going to run that at some point because they always did. They win a few games and like, oh man, we're headed to the playoffs, and then they lose 6 games in a row. But yeah, a really weird year. Yeah, really weird year that they're having, and like seeing that both these teams are in the playoff picture. Is that shocking to you, or are you just not surprised at all because of how crazy this whole year has been as a whole? Like, are you just like not fazed by anything anymore? Or are you like, oh man, this is crazy?
Well, okay, yeah, COVID has definitely made this year a bit of an interesting year. You know, there have been teams that have been fairly good that are all of a sudden terrible. There are teams that have been, absolutely terrible, as in the Dolphins and the Browns, and Bengals that are doing a little bit better. Obviously, Bengals haven't been doing great, but they're not winless. They're not the Jets. At least the Jets are consistent. I
Like
think
that.
I think the Browns were due for they got Baker Mayfield, who's arguably been one of the better quarterbacks they've had quite some time. He's got more commercials than he does wins, but he's still been able to make a difference on that team, on a team that doesn't have the best. Now their offense is pretty good. They're pretty stacked offense. They lost OBJ this year, but they've been able to really make a difference on that team. And I don't think there's much of a shock. They're definitely a very underrated team. They could make a difference. Their defense isn't amazing, but it's stuck in a lot of the games. But like I said, their offense is a powerhouse. Baker's made some very good plays this year. A lot better than I think a lot of people were going to give him credit for. I think they can, if they make the playoffs like they should, I think they can truly make it a lot farther than people will think. They're not a Super Bowl team, but they're pretty good playoff contenders. They can definitely win a game or two. Dolphins, on the other hand, I don't really know. Like I said, Tua's new. He's a rookie. I don't think he's figured it out just yet. He's also injury prone with his knee injuries in college. He's not as hardy as other quarterbacks. I think it's only a matter of time before he gets injured. But I think it really depends. I don't think Dolphins will go very far. I think next year they're going to have a similar year, but they won't be as good. But I don't believe they're going to be as successful as the Browns. The Browns, I do believe, will be playoff contenders and competitors. Sorry. Jets, though, I think Jets have. I think they can go far.
Yeah, the Jets.
They're
0-12 heading into this week. They've got 4 games left. They've got 4 chances to get 1 win. They play at the Seahawks this week, at the Rams next week, against the Browns, and then they finish the year out at the Patriots. Now, as I said, some of these winless teams, rather, they pull off some crazy upset late in the year against a team that you never really think they have a chance to beat.
For a win.
Exactly, yeah.
Brutally desperate.
Yeah, do you see them winning a game, or do you think they're
I think it's
16? Because there's only been 2 other teams since 1970 something that have gone winless.
Yeah, one of them was the Browns, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's 2015. The
Couple years
Browns
ago.
were undefeated, or sorry, on a winless, not undefeated.
Yeah, well,
They were
they
undefeated,
were
but-
they were undefeated in their own way.
Yeah, and then the Lions, I think in 2008, were also winless.
Gotcha. Well,
Or yeah, 2017 Browns rather, not 15.
I think the Jets have the biggest opportunity on the Browns. The Browns are infamous for playing really crappy teams really, really bad. And I think And all four of these teams are obviously going to go in there thinking, all right, it's the Jets. Really don't have that much to worry about, and it's still an NFL team. You know, I mean, they still have good players on there. They're not great, but they're still good. And I think it really depends. It depends on play calling. Raiders, they almost beat, but Raiders aren't great. You know, they're an okay team, but they're not a fantastic team. You really just don't hear about them. If they're going to have the most luck against beating the team, like I said, it'd be the Browns and possibly the Patriots. And Patriots
they're
more
close
so
with some of these teams,
division
and
game,
being
and
an 0-12 team, you think, oh man, they probably get blown out all the time. But they only lost to the Patriots by 3. They only lost to the Chargers by
Raiders by
6.
3.
They nearly, if they didn't have a trash defensive call late in the game, they probably would have beat the Raiders. So this isn't like a team that has just gone out and gotten absolutely embarrassed every week. Although being 0-12 is rather embarrassing. I think you kind of overlook the fact that they've kept it close with some of these decent teams.
They
And you
compete.
just think, oh, yeah, exactly. They compete for it, but they just end up on the wrong side of that scoreboard every game so far.
And like you said, a lot of it could be with the bad refs. In some of the games they get screwed. The Patriots always had good luck with refs. The Ravens tend to get kind of screwed by refs, and Steelers tend to have really, really good luck with refs. And I think that very well could be part of their issue in the next few games, and as it was in the past games that they've lost, is the penalties. Either good penalty calls or bad. That has been a very consistent thing in the team. One of the few consistent pieces is they get penalized a lot, and for stupid things.
Yeah, exactly. Stupid things. That's exactly right. Because it doesn't come down to whether or not it was a good call or a bad call. Because when you make a stupid play, you're just like asking for the referee to throw the flag at you. Like, you got to be more disciplined than that.
And that goes down to the coaching. And that is where it will always step. If you are getting penalties on you left and right, if your guys are disciplined, that's on the coaching. And that has plagued the Jets for many, many years, is they can't find a good, consistent coach. And it's been a long time since they've had one that has brought them to a winning season, or even a couple wins this season. They haven't been able to find that, and that of course has hurt them in the long run, because if you're switching between coaches every few years, you're not going to be able to get one that can really round the team. You look at the Lions, where he just went. Obviously, he's no longer with them. Matt Patricia, right? Or whatever the heck it was. But yeah. He when he started, he had his sexual allegations, or the harassment allegations. Then it took him a while to get the team, and then he had some, behind the scenes thing that he had said, locker room issues, and he was never able to round that team. And that shows with the Jets as well, is if the coach can't really get that relationship, they're going to fail. And that's the Jets have not been able to have an consistent coach. Neither have the Browns, but
Yeah, every time they have a half decent coach, they get rid of him. Like Todd Bowles, I thought it was actually kind of decent. I think if they would have let him have a few more years, I think he probably could have done some with that team. Because now I think Todd Bowles is a member of the Buccaneers coaching staff, and that team is pretty good. And but I just feel like the Jets are so impatient with their coaches, and they did fire their defensive coordinator this week. That was well warranted, but I think you've got to stop playing hot potato with the coaches here, and get a guy that you're set on, that you want for the next 5 years. Let him have the 5 years or whatever, and if he is absolutely terrible after 3.5, fine, let him go. But don't keep getting rid of guys after a year and a half of bad football.
No,
you're not going to be good right away.
They need time to settle
when you're at the level that the Jets are.
Like you said, it's like a season and a half, and they're done. And that's the other thing. Jets tend to fire coaches in the middle of the season. They did that a couple years ago. I forget what the coach was. Halfway through the season, they bumped him. That doesn't make sense. You do that, you screw it. Now, Lions, I understand that's been a pretty bad scenario, but it's now I'm surprised Chargers coach isn't fired yet. But yeah, I think with the Jets, the biggest issue is their management. They don't have a great owner. Money isn't put into it. They can't find a coach. and their team just suffers because of that. Because they definitely have talent. Like, I've always said that they're NFL teams. No matter how quote unquote bad they are, they're still NFL players. Most of them are not complete busts. They just can't play as a team. They haven't figured out what they really need to do. And I think that's the curse for the Jets. They can't find a way to do all edges of the game.
Yeah, the Jets are like just a joke recently. I just don't know what it's going to take. I feel like they've messed up so much that it is going to take an absolute miracle for them to get back to being some like half decent football team. Because I think if it's almost like they just keep digging themselves a hole, like with the coaching changes and moving on from players way too quickly and signing half decent guys that don't fit with your system. Like it's like they're in a hole and they're trying to use the shovel to dig themselves out of it, but they're just digging themselves a deeper hole.
And it's true. And every year
And it's embarrassing.
Oh, it is. They don't. I think they don't realize what they need. And you think like the draft every year, they start picking all these players that make no sense for what they need. Like quarterback Sam Darnold has done fairly well considering what he has, but he doesn't have a bunch of receivers, and they don't go every year and take the top receivers. And they're always in the top 10, but they don't go and take those top receivers that they really should be. And if they do, they don't take one that makes sense. They do the same thing with. I mean, right now the running back is Frank Gore. Like, he's great. He's been himself for quite a long time.
Yeah, what is he, like 70 years old now?
Yeah, it's insane. He's gonna be playing with his grandkids if he retires. But they're not focusing on taking young guys. They're not focusing on taking guys that they can build. They want guys that are either good right now or that were good. They don't ever focus on developing. They focus on what they have right then and there. You look at a guy, like I said, like Sam Darnold, where he has the potential to be quite good. He's not a horrible quarterback. He isn't amazing, but he could be. But they haven't developed him. They never really gave him that opportunity to grow. They kind of just said, "Here you go. Here's your team. Good luck." And I think that is another one of their issues. Is they don't grow. They just kind of leave things where they're at and hope for the best.
Yeah, for their sake, you hope that they can turn things around at some point, because I have a feeling that the natives are getting restless in New York and in New Jersey. But let's move on from teams that are bad and teams that are embarrassing to teams that are going to be playing some January football this year. In the NFC West, it just seems like it's been back and forth between the Rams and Seahawks all year. I feel like no team is a clear favorite to win the division. I feel like no team is well, as I said, clear to win the division. How long is this going to go back and forth for the rest of the next 4 weeks? Do you think the Rams are going to win it? Do you think the Seahawks are going to win it? Where do you think? Who do you think's getting that?
I'm honestly giving it to the
Rams. Automatic bid.
I think Seahawks offense is by far the better team, but their defense is pitiful. They lost to the Cowboys, who are a terrible team. And the Seahawks offense has the potential to be a Super Bowl team, but their defense is not. The defense is the worst defense in the league. Statistically speaking, it shows to be. The Rams have been more consistent. Their offense is not as good, but it's better than the Seahawks. The Rams defense is been pretty good. I mean, they have Aaron Donald, who's a powerhouse of a man. I mean, that guy is wrecking defenses every day. And if he's not getting sacks, he's giving QB pressures, which are messing everything up. And unfortunately, Seahawks defense, they've got nothing going for them. So I think if you look at those two teams together, Rams have a better chance. Seahawks would have a better chance of winning the division in some ways, depending on their schedule. But I think Rams will have a better chance playoff-wise, and might have a better chance in the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think that both these teams are really similar. Like every week, when you start to gain confidence on them, like for the Rams, for sake of argument, and I'll give an example of both. But the Rams, they're a team that you start gaining confidence on. You say, all right, this is a good team. They can win some games, and then they go out and lose to a team like the 49ers last week, and the same for the Seahawks. Just when you think, all right, they're getting some going, they go and lose to the
Sorry, yeah, that's
Giants
what I meant was trying
at home last week.
I mix it all up. They're all terrible teams. But yeah, it's not a very consistent year for really any team. The only teams that have been consistent have been the Steelers and the Chiefs. But it really is just
Saints too.
what was that?
Saints too. They're like really
Yeah,
good.
Saints are
Saints
consistent
too.
right now. I mean, even after they lost Breeze, they have Taysom Hill. Yeah, I mean, Winston hasn't really seen the field, but that's probably a good thing. We you don't need him to run it. But I think it with Seahawks and Rams it really depends on how their defenses play. I mean, like I said, Seahawks defense is really bad. If they can figure something out and right their wrongs, they have a potential of winning the division and going to the playoffs and competing. Rams it really just depends. I think if they can stay consistent, like you said, they lost to the Niners, but the Niners, I don't know. The Niners are still not a terrible team. Their numbers show that they're pretty bad, but they still have some really good coaching, and they've got some pretty good breakout players. They tend to not really know how to use it this year. But and yeah, Seahawks lose to the Giants. Excuse me for saying Cowboys there. But it's all just it's a very interesting year for many, many, many things. And the whole NFC.
Who do you got winning this dumpster fire disaster division? Like, who is it? Do you think the Eagles are going to come back? Do you think the Washington football team is going to win it, or the Giants going to hang on?
I don't completely know. I think it's going to be between the Redskins and the Redskins and the Giants. I mean, Cowboys are going to end bottom of the division, and the Eagles are going to be right. Either Eagles are going to be bottom, the Eagles are going to be right behind. We Eagles have the toughest season left, and Cowboys just don't really know how to do much this year. They've had issues riddled throughout everything. And their coaching staff is, of course, behind the scenes not doing very well. There's been a lot of reports that they have struggled truly with it. I think Redskins, I really give them, no matter how much I don't want to like the Redskins, I really give them a lot of credit this year. They have Alex Smith, who has come back from an incredible injury, and he's doing pretty well. His numbers are fairly decent, and I give him a lot of credit for that. You got guys like Chase Young on defense, who has been a heck of a game changer this year, and arguably one of the better rookies from the. And I think they've overcome a lot of obstacles to get where they are. And they got knocked a lot, of course, for being a team with no name, but they've definitely competed at a lot better of a level than they were expected to. Giants started off on a really, really bad note with Daniel Jones and everything there, and they've been able to kind of figure it out now, and they got McCoy in now, I believe, and they're flipping back and forth. I believe, right? They have McCoy in now.
Yeah, it's just Daniel Jones got hurt, but I think Jones is going to come back this week.
See, I don't know. McCoy's been doing better than Jones was. I think they might play it by ear and see. They'll probably put Jones in to start, and then if he doesn't do well, they'll put him, because they've started having some pretty good wins when Jones got hurt. I think Giants can compete and will continue to compete in certain ways, but they really don't have a lot going for them. Redskins right now have a better quarterback than arguably anybody else in the league right now. And anybody else in the division, I mean. And they have some pretty good game changers on defense. The defense has been pretty decent this year. Giants, on the other hand, really don't have much. Neither one of their quarterbacks is great. Barkley's out, so they don't have their outstanding game changer of a running back. They don't have many big name receivers, and their defense is so. I think Giants are one that really depends. Eagles and Cowboys, you can pretty much write off at this point. I personally believe there really isn't much you can take for either one of those teams. Everybody has hope. Eagles fans as a whole have a lot of hope that there's still time to fix the season and blah blah blah. But the issues stem much farther down than the quarterback and a few guys on the field. It's coaches, it's management, it's everything. And the same thing with the Cowboys. They just they lost Prescott. They were doing pretty well, and they had Dak Prescott. He was looking to have one of his best seasons on record, and then he goes down with an injury, and the team falls apart. And I think that's another example of everything going wrong. The coaching staff kind of got rushed in. It's a new head coach. It's very new to everybody there, and they're having a lot of issues. And I think there's as well step a lot farther down than just the field. So I think Cowboys and Eagles are going to continue to struggle, and for years down the road, and Giants and Redskins who are currently building are going to go up. So I think at the end of the
I don't know.
Redskins will take it.
Yeah, I'm leaning toward them as well because I just feel like while the Giants are up now, I just don't know if they're a team that you can really go forward as a team that's going to sustain momentum down the stretch of the season. Whereas Washington is a team that they've probably been like one of the best 5-7 teams of the year, and again, they're much like the Eagles in the respect that you look back at the games and you say, gotta win those. You gotta win those games. And then all of a sudden I think they're really should be at 500. So I think you're gonna see the Giants tumble a little bit, either starting this week or next week. And I think you'll see Washington take charge there. The NFC West, I don't really know. As you said, I think the Rams and Seahawks are like the same team. And I don't know, like you look at Russell Wilson, you say, oh man, that's a guy that's going to lead you to a division winning season. But at the same time, they've really struggled to take charge. But there's something in me telling me that the Seahawks are going to take that division. Now, the other two divisions in the NFC, the South and the North, pretty much in hand. The Saints, I think, have either clinched the division.
Yeah, they're very
like
close.
one win away from doing so, which is really impressive that they're doing that without.
Well, it just shows that their whole team, their team as a whole is great. Their defense is obviously playing at an elite level, which they haven't really been able to do great in the past. At least personally, I feel they suffered in some ways. This year, they're doing great. They have one of the best safety cores in the league. They have Malcolm Jenkins for the Eagles right now, and he's arguably playing better there than he has for the Eagles. Their linebacker core was pretty decent, and the offensive side they've got Kamara, he's likely to be an MVP this year. He's in the runnings, and he'll be one of the first MVPs in a while. I believe one of the other ones was Adrian Peterson was the last one to be an MVP that was not a quarterback. Could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure it's Peterson.
And then the Bears have fallen apart. I don't think they have a chance to win their division. The Vikings are too far behind. Packers will probably take that division. And then flipping over to the AFC, I don't think anybody can catch the Steelers. They're 11-1. Yes, they're overrated, but in terms of it doesn't matter how
they're overrated, but they have a win.
It's not like college where a committee puts you in. It's based on numbers, like how many wins you have, and it's too late for anybody to catch them. Yes, the Browns are 9-3, only a few games back, but Browns are not a team that you look at and say, all right, I'm confident that they're going to win the division. Like, I think if you said that, you'd probably be considered crazy. I don't care how close they are in the division. Browns are not going to come back and win that division. They're going to blow it somehow if they have the opportunity to.
This year than people expect out of them. They've done pretty well considering what they have.
Yeah, for sure. But I don't care how good the Browns compete. Their history is just like
they have. They're infamous for.
It's terrible because they go in this cycle, and even this year they've done it. Yeah, where they play a good game, they get all this hype, then they go out and embarrass themselves for a couple games, They get a lot of criticism, and then they get it together and come back and start winning.
We look at games
But
like last year.
we're rounding that part of the cycle where
You look
what's
at games
that?
last year, like where they beat the Ravens. You know, they beat some other pretty good teams, and then they go and they lose, 30-something to like 6. They
Exactly.
implode. They have one good game to get cocky, and then they snap under the pressure.
They've managed to keep it together somewhat this year. Again, 9-3 is a really good record, but like
Yeah.
they're rounding that cycle where they've beat a couple of good teams and they're getting a lot of hype, and I feel like they're gonna drop off the edge here any day now.
Oh yeah. There's still plenty of games left. And they could end the season, 9-7 very easily. Which is still not a terrible way to do it, but
No, not terrible at all.
for the Browns, that's a dang good season to put on the books.
Now the AFC South is another division, much like the NFC West, where there are two teams in tied for first place, kind of struggling to take charge. One week you get hyped up for the Colts, and then they play a bad game, like they almost lost to the Texans last week. You get hyped up over the Titans, and then the Browns blow them out. Like, where do you see that division going? I just have a feeling that the Titans are going to win that division somehow.
I agree. I think Titans have a better coach. They last year in the playoffs, they were able to do things that they were not meant to do. They go in with fantastic game plans, and the games they're not supposed to win, they figure it out. They got Derrick Henry, who's starting to be slowed. Teams are starting to kind of figure him out a little bit more. At the end of the day, he's fast, he's strong, he's a beast. But if you can get him out of the equation, you've almost won the game. They don't have a great quarterback. They have okay receivers, but I still think I agree. I think Titans can take that one. I like the Colts. Philip Rivers deserves to have one really good season at it. He'll retire. If not, I don't think he'll retire this year. I think he'll retire next year, and then that'll be that. But I think it depends. But I do think that I agree with you. I think Titans will take that.
And then we've got the AFC West. Mahomes and crew have that under control. There's no doubt about it.
Do you think
division. And we kind of previewed the
do you
AFC
think
East a little bit.
Mahomes and the Chiefs can win the Super Bowl again, or do you think they're going to get something knocked and they'll be out of the playoffs early?
That's the other thing. I don't know, because the teams that are right now in the playoff picture are teams that we haven't really seen in the playoffs as of late. Like right now, the Chiefs will be playing the Colts in the playoffs, and we've seen the Colts in the playoffs in past recent years with Andrew Luck as a quarterback.
Yeah.
But we haven't really seen Philip Rivers. I mean, we saw Philip Rivers as in the playoffs with the Chargers a couple of years ago, but we haven't seen him. We haven't seen a Rivers with the Colts in their system playing a really good team. And then you've got other teams that might move down or slide in, or the Raiders could slide in. The Chiefs know their deal.
Yeah.
Dolphins might slide down. I don't see any way the Dolphins could beat the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs will win the wildcard round no matter who they play. The thing that I want to see them play, the team I want to see them compete against, is the Steelers, because I think they can expose the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think right now they are the best team in the AFC. I know the Steelers were 11-0 until the loss to Washington last week, but they're overrated. I think the Chiefs will really expose them in the playoffs and really show how fraudulent that team is. I think they're big. I think the Chiefs' biggest competitor right now for the playoffs, their biggest threat to repeating is, from the AFC at least, is the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, the Bills they're a bit of a powerhouse right now for sure. They're consistent across, and they've got a heck of a quarterback in Josh Allen. I mean, he's young and he's a franchise quarterback for sure. Heck of an arm, fast, and like I said before, very smart.
So Mahomes and crew, as I said, they've got it under control. They're that division easy. and as we previewed the AFC East a little bit, the Bills seem to be comfortably in the lead, but do the Dolphins have a chance? Can the Dolphins pull off some improbable run, or can the Patriots even make some miracle comeback?
I unfortunately I want to say never knock the Patriots. They've proven time and time again that they can figure it out. And even this year, they start off with a really, really bad record, and they've been able to turn around into a pretty decent season since then. Bill Belichick is obviously one of the best coaches that the NFL has ever seen, and Cam Newton has been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL at given time. He was an MVP back in the Super Bowl season, and he's definitely proven that he can be a very good quarterback. I think the Patriots have an opportunity, but I unfortunately don't think they will. Dolphins, as I said before, Tua he's a rookie. He just doesn't have it in him. And they don't have a fantastic team all around. They don't have many good game changers. You don't need, but there's no great guys to kind of get around. You know what I mean? There's most big time winning teams have some guy that the team is able to really get behind and go, whether it's a standout running back with the Titans, Derrick Henry, whether it's an amazing coach, whether it's this big name quarterback, whether it's a fantastic standout linebacker or a safety or who knows. There's always one person to stand out. And Dolphins just don't really have that big person they get behind. They've got some really good players, but they don't have one that's been a huge game changer this year. And I think that, I know that sounds weird to say it that way, but I think that will be one of their downfalls. There isn't one big person that can make or break a game. And if it comes down to the wire, they don't really have many. They haven't really had many times in the past few weeks where they've been able to kind of pull something out of their when they need to. Yeah. They've been consistent. They've won, but they also haven't played the best. They have like another Steelers kind of schedule where they look better. I think they look better than they should.
Yeah, as you said, every team has that guy that in crunch time they go to for a big play. Chiefs have Mahomes to Tyreek Hill.
They've got Travis Kelce
Steelers
as well.
have Claypool and Schuster, and yeah, that's right, Kelce as well. The Dolphins have Mike Gesicki. Like he's a good tight end. Don't get me wrong, but
yeah,
in a late game against the Chiefs or the Bills or the Titans, Gesicki's the one guy that you kind of have a feeling they're going to go to, and as soon as you lock him down, it's like, okay, well, we've got you. Nowhere else for you to go.
Exactly.
Where a lot of the other teams that are successful they do have the one superstar to go to, and it's always quite obvious that they're going to him in a tight scenario. But all these successful teams that go on a deep run always have that second guy that they go to in crunch time that you don't expect, and the Dolphins just don't have that guy.
There's always, like you said, there's always that backup. You have that one big superstar, and they got all the coverage and this, that, and the other thing, but there's another good one somewhere hiding behind. And Dolphins, they don't. They have some good guys, but they don't have a lot of great. And almost every other team that I can think of does have that. And even on defense, there's a lot of teams out there that their standouts are somewhere on their defense, but Dolphins don't have that either.
Yeah, that's all I really have. Thanks for. I'm sorry to waste your time or whatever, but taking up more time. I thought this wasn't going to be so long, but
no,
thanks,
you're
man.
good. Yeah, of course. Thought I could help.
Is there anything else you had?
No, it's just the end of the season is going to be a very interesting one, and I think when it comes to playoff times and even the Super Bowl, I'm curious to see if coronavirus is going to have. If we get to the middle of the playoffs and you've got, or I guess it'd be more so near the end of the playoffs, you've got Chiefs and Steelers seeing each other. Is that going to end up being, what if Mahomes goes out with coronavirus or something like that? I'm curious as to see, if COVID has an impact on the rest of the season. But other than that, I got nothing.
That's actually interesting. I did have some thoughts about that, and I was didn't think of it until now. You're right. I wonder how that's going to go. In a, during the regular season, it's fine to say, okay, we're going to postpone the game or whatever. But in the playoffs, it's much different. It is a bigger game.
There's
it's
a
bigger
limited time.
platform, and sure, you can say, yeah, exactly. There's limited time, and like if they get to the Super Bowl and the whole team has it, like they're just going to push the Super Bowl back. Like I just don't know how it's going to
I
work.
don't think you can. It's such a big thing. I don't. And that's where my question is. What are they going to do if something like that would happen? Where let's say it's Chiefs and Saints in the Super Bowl. What if Mahomes goes down with COVID, and what if they lose Taysom Hill and Drew Brees? Then what? You really wonder what would
I think the only saving grace for the Super Bowl is that there is a week off.
Yes, but it's only 1 week. What if you got positive cases? It's just there's going to be questions about it. The rest of the season is really going to depend on. Usually, it's as we were talking of what teams are going to be able to compete and this and the other thing, what teams are going to need to be consistent. And I think the biggest piece of the rest of the season is what impact is COVID going to have, because that can truly make or break a team this year. They could be having a standout year and be really doing great, and then one thing goes wrong with coronavirus, and that can spell the end of their season. And I think that is going to be the biggest factor of winning.
Yeah, COVID already took the March Madness from me. They better not take the Super Bowl too. So,
well, that'd be bad.
hope COVID's not a big issue. But again, thanks for yeah. But again, thanks for coming on.
Yeah,
thanks for doing this. I know it's finals week, so it probably
Oh,
wasn't
good.
the best time, but it's the end of the week. We got
No,
nothing to do.
It's a Thursday. I'm not busy.
All right. Well, thanks again. Hopefully we'll do something for the playoffs or something.
Sounds like a plan. Count me in.